The Baseball Together Network presents the Seattle Baseball Together podcast with your host, Blackjack Brad, and now, Seattle Baseball Together.
Welcome, Seattle baseball family, to this month's episode of the Seattle Baseball Together podcast, where we talk about the Seattle Mariners every month. This month, we've got quite a bit to go through between a pretty solid month for the Mariners and a lot to talk about with the trade deadline. Usually, you've probably noticed I'll do 3 up, 3 down, 5 takeaways, whatever, or have a guest. This month, we're just going to talk about the Mariners in July and going forward with some new faces on this squad. Well, first, let's start with this. It is actually the evening of August 1st. The Mariners did play today. Typically, I try to get this recorded a little bit earlier, kind of towards the end of the month and not going into the next month. But I wanted to wait to see what happened with the trade deadline, see what kind of moves Jerry DiPoto, or also known as Trader Jerry, the kinds of things that he was going to do before I did anything, and then I got sick, and it was another day. But anyway, so here we are, the night of August 1st, and you're probably listening to this at least August 2nd, so you know some of the stuff that I'm talking about here. Well, after today's loss against the Texas Rangers, the Mariners sit at 56-50, and if you had told me the Mariners would be 6 games over 500 after their game on August 1st, if you had told me that back in March, I said, well, that's a little high. That is a little bit high. Not saying that you're high, just that win total is a little bit higher than what I had expected. I'm going to say this several times throughout this episode. I can already tell. I know it. I expect this team to be there. I feel like they're average. They are a 500 ball club that had a really good July. Finished 14-10, which is a little bit better than June. Played 2 last games. June was 14-12. They've won 22 of their last 36, which is pretty good. You do the math on that. That's 8 games over 500 over the last 36 games. I will take that all the time. All the time for the Mariners. Absolutely. That's a pretty good stretch of games. I was really curious because the Mariners were no-hit twice in it was like a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. It was a really close period. And I was like, golly, this is like the end of it right here because they didn't play well between. And that second no-hitter was not really a big surprise. But how about this? That second no-hitter against the Tigers happened on May 18th. Since that time, the Mariners are 35-28. That's a team that has rallied. They've pulled it together. You can tell that they're a close-knit group. There was a lot of talk of chemistry when the Mariners made that first deal early in the week before the trade deadline. A lot of people are not happy about the move. There was stuff that came out about how, players felt betrayed. There was somebody who was unnamed who actually went on a little bit of a tirade and said that it never changes. This team is not trying to win. And like I said, I'll get quite a bit more into this later. But I kind of get the frustration. The Mariners every single year, it feels like, are sellers at the trade deadline, not necessarily making the moves that you would think that would get them into the playoffs that year. And honestly, I feel like it was Kyle Seager who went on that little bit of a tirade there, to go off on a side note here a little bit. Because he's been with the Mariners for 10 years, and they have come close to the playoffs during that time twice, right? So he's got to be really frustrated. I feel like that was a lot of frustration from him boiling over. And that's, like I said, I'm speculating. There was no name attached to that. I'm speculating that maybe it was Kyle Seager who said this because it would make sense. He is really the only guy in that clubhouse who it would make sense for that to come out of his mouth. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him. The Mariners, this group, they felt like they were rolling. They were on a roll here. And they were winning, and they traded away a guy who had been the best player in the bullpen, their closer, for at least a pretty solid stretch of games. But anyways, we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. Let's continue talking about the Mariners in July. They are second in the MLB in OPS. I don't have that number handy. I wasn't able to find the exact number again, but I did see a graphic during a game. Second only to The Toronto Blue Jays. Sorry, that's OPS with runners in scoring position, which I feel like that's a pretty big deal. If you can get those guys on base, you're often going to drive them in. But those are some issues that we saw the Mariners have specifically with the Rangers this weekend. Did not do well with runners in scoring position. Had a couple of that first game of the series, you had guys break out. You had Kellenic, who we'll talk a little bit more about him in a little bit as well. Hit a home run, and Kyle Seager hit a home run in that game. If not, then I believe it was the next game maybe. But anyway, not a whole lot going with runners in scoring position in that game, or in that series, and it ended up being really the downfall of that series. The Mariners ended up dropping it 1-2. But here's the thing: despite having dropped the last two series, the one against the Rangers, the one against the Astros, the Mariners have won. Like I said, with that record that they've won or split, I believe it was 10 of their last 12 series, something like that. So I feel like that's still really good baseball that the Mariners are playing right now. I have some numbers here for us to talk about. Despite everything, despite the M's playing really well right now, let's kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Like I said, that's 2-4 in their last 6 games. Okay, that's dropping 2 of 3 to the Astros, and then going and dropping 2 of 3 to the Rangers. I still feel like this is an average team. They're going to finish around 500, and I still believe they're going to miss the playoffs. The Mariners have really been making their money in extra inning games. That's been their bread and butter. So I have a little breakdown for you. In 7-inning games, which are weird and are going to go away next year, thank goodness, the Mariners are 2-2 in 7-inning games. That's 2 doubleheaders. They've split both of them. And then we have 9-inning games. After today, the Mariners are 44-46. So if things are going regulation, the Mariners are just under 500. That's not a good way to go. But then in extra innings, 10-2. 10-2. Sitting 6 games over 500. Extra innings has made that up. That's a 500 team. You can't rely on going into extra innings. And that's 10-2. They were 10-1 before Saturday, when Diego Castillo gave up a walk-off home run to Jonah Heim, I believe it was, the catcher for the Rangers. So I still feel like they're average. They're going to miss the playoffs this year, and that's fine. That's fine. I have more on that later. Hopefully you'll stick around to hear all this stuff that I'm teasing for later on. But I found another interesting number for this Mariners team. So I found a total team WAR. I found a total team WAR stat for every team in the bigs. It breaks down by position, and then it adds it up, and you get a total team WAR. This is on baseballreference.com. And the Mariners as a team are sitting negative 7.2. That's 23rd in MLB. The Cards are just above with negative 4.1. They're actually tied with the Tigers, who are playing pretty well right now. But then the Rangers are the next team down at negative 8.2. So if you look at it, the Mariners, quite honestly, the whole roster together is not technically better than a replacement player. The guys they have playing as a collective unit. I actually have the chart pulled up here, and for a little bit of context here, the Giants are leading MLB with a team WAR of 12.2. The Astros just behind at 12.0. The Diamondbacks are at the very bottom at negative 16.5. So the Mariners are sitting in there towards the bottom, like I said, and that's not real good. The areas where the Mariners are sitting at 0 or positive, breaking even at catcher. I think Cal Raleigh has come in and done a pretty good job with that. He's done pretty decently offensively. He's kind of found his stride recently and has managed to come in and have a positive effect defensively, especially. Offensively, he's driven in a few runs and done well at the plate. Second base also breaking even, with Dylan Moore leading the way there, actually, as the top player, getting the most plate appearances at second base. And then we have shortstop. That's no surprise. J.P. Crawford, he's brought the Mariners to a WAR of 1.0 at the shortstop position, but the outfield has not been good. Outfield is not good. Bottom 3 in left field and center field. Kyle Lewis actually still has the most plate appearances as center fielder with 141. Then Taylor Trammell, and then Jared Kelenic is after that. And let's be honest, Taylor Trammell was not great. He had a nice little stretch. Kelenic really struggled there for a while, and Kyle Lewis wasn't healthy. So that makes sense. That's just fine. I mean, not fine, but it makes sense. And then in right field, 0.1 with Mitch Haniger leading the way at 329 plate appearances. He's the guy who's gotten the right field WAR up above 0, but pitching is way down. Pitching is cumulative pitching is negative 3.8. That's not good. I mean, you're gonna have issues, and that really paints a picture of what this team looks like, what we're looking at with the Mariners here, and why I still believe this is an average team. They're actually overachieving. So Baseball Reference has a statistic that they call the Pythagorean win-loss, which is basically it's the expectation of their record to this point. And so for August 1st, Baseball Reference updates in the middle of the night. So it actually had them at 47 and 58. I put them at 47 and 59 because I'm assuming that they're going to say they weren't supposed to win that game today. They're not supposed to be doing this well. They're supposed to be 12 games under 500. And to be sitting 6 games above 500 is outstanding and overachieving. And I'm not going to say that I feel like the Mariners are going to come crashing down to earth. This last week was prophetic of what's to come and what to expect for the rest of the season. But I do feel like they're going to continue to lose games big to teams that they're supposed to lose to. I say this every month. The Mariners are going to lose games they're not supposed to. They're going to win games they're not supposed to. For instance, that first game against the Astros, Dylan Moore hitting that grand slam, I mean, that was something else. That was a miracle for him to hit that grand slam, for the Mariners to go up and end up winning that game. They were not supposed to win it. With the way things went, they should have gotten swept. Now, should they have lost that game to the Rangers on Saturday? No, they should not have. Castillo did not hit his spot. Heim crushed it. There was a runner on second because of the extra inning rules, but then again, that wouldn't have mattered because that runner on second canceled out with the Mariners runner on second that scored. So it would have just been, either way, it would have been a 1-run win. Anyway, the Mariners to me still feel average, and I'm okay with that because they've been below average for so long, so long. Like I said, we've seen 2 times in the last 10 years or so where this team has contended for even a wild card spot. I'm going to take average. I will take that this year. Let's talk about Kelenic for a little bit. I'm really happy with what I've seen with him. He's had some great at-bats, just absolutely outstanding at-bats. His plate discipline has improved so much since coming back up from Tacoma. Been really happy with it. Has he chased some bad pitches? Yes, everybody's going to chase bad pitches. That's just the nature of the beast. That's baseball. That's fine. Is it a little more frustrating seeing him do it because of what we've seen in the past? Yes, it is. However, he has drawn a tremendous amount of walks since he's been up. His plate discipline has been absolutely outstanding. And Friday, in the series opener against the Rangers, before I go there, let's backtrack a little bit. One of the areas that we've seen Kelenic specifically struggle with has been breaking balls. Chasing him out of the zone, chasing him low, chasing him outside. I think at one point he got hit by one, but still swung. It was really, really ugly there for a while. So teams were just like, don't throw him a fastball. Nobody's throwing him a fastball. He wasn't getting anything straight. Now, let's go back to Friday, the series opener against the Rangers. His first hit is a slider. He sends it to right center field for, I believe it was a double. Drove in a couple runs and got a double. And then his very next at bat, he gets another slider, and he sends that one deep into the right field seats for a home run. And he's been so much better. He's been drawing, like I said, so many walks, a ton of walks, working the count full because he's got the plate discipline. His plate discipline is there. Now he just needs to really perfect the contact. And quite honestly, I think he's on his way. I think there are still some mental hurdles that need to be cleared there in order for him to really be the guy who we've been expecting, who we've been wanting to see, who he was in AAA, to be honest. Because, I looked at his numbers and a lot of people were saying, I don't think he was ready. I don't think he was ready to come up. It's like, okay, the dude spent 30 games in AAA this year. And by the way, this is his first experience with AAA. And he was batting around 320, hit 9 home runs in 30 games. Come on now. That's 1 every 3 games. And there was a stretch there when he was struggling when he went back down from the big leagues. There's not a whole lot else you can do in AAA at that point. There's not a whole lot else you can do in the minor leagues. So for somebody to say that they didn't think Kelenic was ready, maybe it looked like there for a little while he was going to be a 4A prospect, which is a bummer because that's what we got out of Mike Zunino at the plate, right? He was an all-star catcher who was a 4A hitter, and that was painful to watch, and we were worried that maybe that was going to be the case with Kelenic. But he's found the plate discipline. These curveballs, this breaking stuff in the show is nothing like he has ever seen in his life. And on top of that, he's a guy who has never had to deal with failure of any type at any point in his baseball career. Not in, I guarantee, in Little League, middle school, high school, he never had to deal with like, oh my gosh, I'm slumping. Baseball, he's a guy who baseball has come easy to, even in the minor leagues. So for him to get to the big leagues and struggle the way he did, there was some major reflection and some figuring out about himself that needed to be done for him to come back and succeed. Part of that came with standing up more in his stance. If you notice, he's not quite crouched down so far, and I think that goes a long way to being able to identify and react a little bit better to fastballs and hang in there a little bit more for curveballs, not commit quite so early in swing. So Kelenic, I feel like, is on his way. He's really on his way. We've seen a lot of great things from him. And if he doesn't fully put it all together this year, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I want to see him continue to go in the right direction. He doesn't need to be the guy who's out there hitting the 3-run home run in the 8th inning every single day. But if we get it from him once or twice a month at this point, I'm fine with that. Let's do it. That's great. All right, we got about 10 minutes left here. Let's talk trade deadline because I have a lot of thoughts. So first, we had Kendall Graveman and Rafael Montero were traded away to the Houston Astros for relief pitcher Joe Smith and third baseman Abraham Toro. Now, at the time, I was really, really very upset about just the timing of this trade. I knew one of those guys in the bullpen was going to get traded, at least one of them, because, like I've said, this Mariners team, as constituted, was probably not going to the playoffs. Not going to be the team that was going to go to the promised land. We're going to have to make some deals, going to make some moves that were necessary to get this team to where they needed to be. So Graveman happened to be the first victim. The move made sense, ultimately. He had an expiring contract. He'd been playing well. A lot of teams wanted him. Houston, as we had seen, so this deal was done on Tuesday. Houston, as we had seen, had some bullpen issues, and I felt like all year they've had some bullpen issues. So they were looking for a really good reliever. And from what I understand, my issue with the trade was the timing. I was like, you're really going to send the best reliever over to the Houston Astros when we're playing them? Come on, Jerry, what are you doing? And it came out. I heard later that what it was is Houston didn't want him to have to quarantine after traveling, because the way that worked was if he didn't just go across the hallway to the Astros there, he was going to have to fly commercial to catch up with them at their next stop. And if they fly commercial, they have to quarantine. They have to, because of COVID protocols and everything. So that actually made sense when I heard that. It's like, okay, I can forgive the timing on that because it makes more sense. And Graveman didn't even end up pitching in the series after that. He did not pitch. He didn't pitch for the Astros, and I wonder if that might have been part of the deal. I don't know. Probably not. Anyway, because we had Toro come in and play, and he's done very well. And I think it was his first plate appearance as a Mariner. He hit a home run, and then he did it the very next night against the Astros as well. Currently, he is working on a 7-game hitting streak with the Mariners. Not just with the Mariners, but 5 of those games have come with the Mariners. 2 previously with the Astros. 7 games in a row. He's done really well. He's also had 2 3-hit games since the trade. Abraham Toro might be the third baseman of the future for the Mariners. If not, he's playing pretty well at second base. I like him there. I'm okay with it. I could see this offseason, the Mariners, I don't want to get too much into offseason predictions. I'll save that for a few months from now. But as far as this goes, I could see the Mariners either letting Seager walk in free agency and not worrying, we're not going to bring you back. You're not part of our future plans. That's fine. Or signing him to a 1-year deal, maybe 2-year with a club option that second year, something like that. I don't know, because you've got Noelvi Marte in the minor leagues who has said he'd like to come up at shortstop, which of course he would. He's a competitor. He's a shortstop in the minor leagues. He would like to play shortstop at that big league level, but he could come up and either play third base, or you can move Toro to third, put him in second. I don't know. Because you've got a Gold Glover in J.P. Crawford at shortstop right now. I don't feel like you necessarily want to move him over for either of those guys. So that will be interesting to see how the future pans out, because the Mariners, I believe, still have 3 or 4 years of control with Toro, and that was part of the reason the deal was made. Like I said, Graveman had an expiring contract. He was not necessarily part of the future of this team. Toro is part of the future of this team. And the other thing that I had heard about Toro this weekend, I believe it was, in this game against the Rangers, just to be clear, I don't typically watch games with the sound on because my house is loud enough as it is with 2 kids running around that I turn it down. But I happen to have the noise up, or the sound up, on the game for a little bit, and I heard him say that Jerry DiPoto has been trying to get Toro for like the last 2 or 3 years at the trade deadline, but the Houston Astros were not willing to let him go. They happened to have Graveman, who was a piece they wanted, and Montero was just I don't want to say a trash piece because I don't want to call anybody trash, but he was just kind of a send-along because the Mariners don't want him anymore. And kind of a way to sweeten the deal. But yeah, Jerry DiPoto's been trying to get Toro. He got him, and he's got lots of club control, and it turns out he is a really good player. He's going to be a really good piece to go with the Mariners this year. All right, our second trade, we had the Mariners. The Mariners traded a couple minor leaguers, Carter Binns and Joaquin Tejada, to the Pirates for Tyler Anderson. He's a starting pitcher, lefty. He came in and he pitched. I felt like he pitched pretty well on Saturday for the Mariners. That was his first start. Pitched, I believe it was 5 innings, gave up 3 runs. Not a bad start. I'll take that. If he's the 5th starter, I'll take it all the time. That is good enough for me. The offense should be able to support that, in my opinion. If they don't, that's an offensive loss. That's not a loss on the pitcher. I think that's something this offense should be able to back up. I'm happy with Tyler Anderson so far. The Mariners then traded away reliever JT Chargois and minor leaguer Austin Shenton to Tampa Bay for closer Diego Castillo. I feel like this is a good deal. The Mariners, I feel like, upgraded from Graveman to Castillo. Yes, Castillo in his first appearance as a Mariner gave up a walk-off home run because he didn't hit his spot. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. That, like I said, is baseball. I believe in Castillo. I was very excited for this trade because another guy the Mariners have under control for another 4 years. Having a closer like Castillo for 4 years, even if this offseason the Mariners say, you know what, we don't necessarily love what we've seen from him in our ballpark, let's trade him for another quality reliever. There are a ton of teams who would be willing to swap closers, or you can make some deals and get around to the closer who you want. There are a lot of teams who would love to have Castillo on their pitching staff, and the Mariners have him. We should be happy about this. We should be really happy about this trade. Way better than Chargois. That's an upgrade. Yes, Austin Shenton was considered, I believe he was considered the third baseman of the future. He's third baseman in the minor leagues. But with Toro, with Toro, I think we've got him. I'm not worried about Shenton anymore. I like Toro. I'm okay with this trade. Absolutely. So I don't like to give grades, but I'm happy with what the Mariners did at the trade deadline. I would have liked to have seen one more deal. Honestly, when they first made the deal for Toro, I thought he was going to be a piece to trade away. I thought that it was one of those things where DePoto is going to a team for like a big time bat, a big time, maybe a second baseman who can hit well. And they're saying, we're not going to give him up unless you give us a prospect with 3 or 4 years of control who, is considered a top prospect or hits well or whatever. So I was like, okay, so what he did is he didn't want to get rid of any of his. What he did is he went out and he got one to trade. But the more I've learned about Toro, the more I've watched him. No, that wasn't the move. The move was this guy's going to be in our infield for a long time, a very, very long time. All right, let me close with this. I have a closing point here about the Mariners the rest of this year. Like I said, there were a lot of people who were really upset at the trade deadline, including players that the Graveman was the guy to go. But this is my thing. Were the Mariners going to make the playoffs with Kendall Graveman as the closer? Maybe. Possibly. Were they going to win a World Series with Kendall Graveman as the closer? No. Absolutely not. No chance. Now, with the way this team is currently constituted, are the Mariners going to make the playoffs? Maybe. Possibly. But honestly, probably not. Are the playoff chances worse now than they were last week? This year? Probably. I think that they probably are. There is a chance that could be the case. But this is the thing that as Mariner fans, we're not necessarily used to, because we're used to being a farm club for the rest of the league. And we're used to being told, this is the group. Jerry DePoto is playing a long game. He's playing for sustained success with multiple runs, not just at a wild card, not of the division, but he's playing for multiple years of running at the whole thing. He wants multiple runs at a World Series, and that, as a Mariners fan, is what I want. Will it be nice when the Mariners get in the playoffs? Yes, it has been a long time. 20 years ago this year, the Mariners won 116 games, got eliminated by the Yankees in the ALCS 4-1, and have not been back to the playoffs since. It has been a long, painful ride. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I was ready to give up at that Robinson-Cano deal. When the Mariners signed Cano, I was like, it's done. This team does not want to win. But I couldn't quit him. I couldn't quit this team. It just runs too deep. But Jerry DePoto, to me, feels like he knows what he's doing. The moves made at the trade deadline were done to get this team ready for the playoffs next year. And in my opinion, the World Series the year after that. This is not a team that is trying to just make the playoffs, just get in with the wild card. If we can just get our foot in the door. No. This is a team that the general manager wants to get ready to make a run at a title. He did it in Texas. He got the Texas Rangers at the doorstep. They were in the World Series, and in my opinion, should have won it, but they didn't. And that's what he is trying to do with the Seattle Mariners. As fans, it's painful. Kendall Graveman was an excellent closer. He was playing some great baseball. He was doing some excellent pitching, and he's gone now. For a guy, some of us probably don't know because he played for the Rays. Let's be honest. I mean, that's a real thing, right? But be patient this year, because next year, I'm calling it right now, August 1st, and it's probably not that big of a prediction, but next year the Mariners will make the playoffs. And it's not just going to be the wild card. The Mariners are going to make a run at the division and a deep playoff run. A deep playoff run in 2022. And with that, baseball family, let me remind you that you can hop on our shop on 9plusus.com, nineplusus.com, and you can shop our entire Seattle collection. You can search Seattle in the search bar, and it will take you to all of our merch. We have t-shirts, we have sweatshirts. The weather is starting to cool down a little bit, so maybe start thinking about that sweatshirt. At checkout, use the code CPOD, SEAPOD, for 15% off your order of any item in the Seattle collection, and you'll look real nice as the season starts to come to a close. We've only got, August, September. We've only got 2 months left in the season here. We're to the point where this is our complete season last year. We had 60 games. We got about 60 games to go. A little bit less because the Mariners played 106. 56 games to go along the way. And you know what? We might not make the playoffs this year, but it's going to be one heck of a ride to finish out the rest of this season. And I think the Mariners will actually have a significant chance at playing spoiler along the way. But baseball family, with that, have a great August, and I will catch you next month.